Hey Julio, let's see this new set of essays, shall we? We've got pizza sales. Okay, the flow chart is there. Let's see. The present figure provides information regarding the evolution of pizza commerce in 3 European countries, namely France, Spain, and Portugal, in the year 2018. First, it can be seen that the French sales are dominated by 3 peaks in April, June, and September, with more than 125,000 units sold. In January, however, very few pizzas were sold in this country, with roughly 25,000. Secondly, the pizza commerce in Portugal starts with roughly 90,000 units sold at the beginning of the year. Then there was a pronounced dip over spring, followed by a sharp increase in pizza sales in summer, in which 130,000 units were sold in July. Okay. At the end of the year, sales plummet again. Thirdly, Spanish sales are roughly constant along the first semester. In August, there was a sharp increase in pizza sales, followed by a steady decrease in autumn. Okay. If we take a closer look at the line graph, we can observe that France is the country in which pizza commerce is the highest, while Spain and Portugal are probably similar. Overall, it is clear from the figure that sales increased significantly during summertime in the 3 European countries. Finally, whereas the French sales are the most regular, the Portuguese pizza sales were extremely uneven. Okay, so this is the line graph that you were given. And this is an interesting one because essentially you have 36 pieces of information. You clearly cannot mention all of them, and you shouldn't try to mention all of them. But you do need to pinpoint which are the most important things to include. So let's see if I can come up with a few things. For me, if I were going to start with Portugal, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Why did I start with Portugal? Because it started the year with the highest pizza sales. Then 2 months later, it had a low. And then 3 months later, it hit its only peak. Okay. 2 months later, it hit the second low, an even lower low, if you will. And after some fluctuation, it ended the year pretty much where it began. Okay, which is why I picked 1, the beginning, 2, this low, 3, this high, 4, this low, and then 5, the end. Okay, that's how I would do this. As far as Spain is concerned, I would do basically 1, 2, 3, and then 4. So yeah, I guess you could get away with doing one less here, and that's fine. Okay. Now, when I say these 4 points, I mean that you would want to say that there was some fluctuation. So if I had to describe this whole period, I would basically describe it as a period of some fluctuation. Okay. Do you want to mention the thing that happened in April? Maybe. I mean, you could. But if you didn't, I think it would be fine. But you absolutely want to mention it had 0 sales in July. I think that's really telling. And then the last thing that I would talk about, of course, is France. I would want to mention that had the lowest pizza sales in January of all 3 countries. However, it did have the highest sales overall. How do I know that? Because it has 3 peaks here. So on average, you can assume that France had the highest sales. And so that's what I would talk about. So while it started really low, it had some volatility over the year. So it started extremely low. And then in April, hit this high of, I don't know, 125,000. All right, which it also reached in June. Okay, it reached an even higher peak in September at around 140,000, only to dip again and end the year at around 125,000. And that's really all you have to say for France. Okay. But I'm just doing this to give you an idea of what data points are important and how you want to do this, because you started with the highs and then you went back to January. The reason why I don't really agree with that is because it's a chronological chart. When you have a chronological chart like this, it makes more sense to start where? Well, where you would start if you were telling a story. You always start at the beginning. So when it is a chronological chart like this, that makes the most sense. Okay, because you're telling a story. And how do we tell stories? By starting at the beginning. Okay. If this were a bar chart that was like just static and just showed a moment in time, then doing what you did would make sense. You start with the highs, and then you go to the low, and then maybe you kind of smush some details in the middle. But that's not the case here. It's chronological. So it makes a lot more sense to start at the beginning, talk about the main points, and then talk about the end. And that's it. Okay. So I hope that that makes sense. I hope what you need to do here is clear. Okay. So, I saw that you included an overview, and so that was good. I think you could have included a little less in your overview. Yeah, because you had about 3 sentences that covered your overview. You don't need to do that. I think 1 to 2 sentences is more than enough. All right. So, and based on the one that you had here, I would probably say that overall, France had the highest pizza sales on average. And it looks like Portugal had the lowest. All right, and really, I think that's fine. I think that's all you really need to say. All right, let's talk about the throwaway society essay now. Okay, what are the causes and what are the problems? All right, so nowadays it is becoming increasingly common in the Western world to purchase different goods in order to use them once or twice. Some say that we live in not the, but a throwaway society. You can see it even uses the here in the question. There are a number of causes which have led to this situation, like capitalism and the rise of social media. In my opinion, it is critical that developed countries become aware of the various problems of this attitude. Okay, fine. Let me say. So you talked about the problems. Okay, what are the causes? You said social media, and then what problems does it lead to? Didn't really tell us. You didn't tell us any of the problems, and I would have liked that because yeah, it's like you're telling me here what the solutions are. Yeah, it's like you're telling me what the solutions are, that it's necessary they become aware. But that's not what they asked you. They asked you what problems does it lead to. And so this to me would have been the right thing to cover. Okay. So your first couple of sentences are fine when you say there are many causes which lead to the situation like capitalism and the rise of social media. Um, and the problems it creates are greater waste, environmental pollution, as well as a weakened economy. Okay, so you could have done something like that. Let's keep going. Firstly, it cannot be denied that the majority of Western countries are capitalist. As a result of capital accumulation, individuals are used to constantly buying. Here, you need an ing because you're used to doing something for numerous reasons and throw them away when they lose interest in them. For example, a recent study showed that Western adolescents dispose of their clothes 5 times more often than youngsters in developing countries, despite the fact, get rid of, we don't use of after despite, that the quality was superior without a shadow of a doubt. And you don't need the shadow of a doubt here. It's not necessary. It doesn't help you. So I would have just taken it out. It felt kind of unnatural. Even though their quality was superior to other goods, or their quality was outstanding. Okay, you don't need to say superior because it then asks, it kind of begs the question, superior to what? All right. So, a second cause of this behavior is the spread of social networks among young adults. It is commonly agreed that watching online advertisements daily increases the amount of money people spend on the aforementioned advertised items. Okay, fine. You don't want a second one here. Again, you've got 2 questions here. What are the causes? What are the problems? So this firstly is wrong, and this secondly is wrong. Because that's only really makes sense if you're arguing the same side of the topic, but you're not. Um, so I would have started off with something like, yeah, nothing actually. Get rid of the secondly and just start straight ahead. The main problem of the so-called throwaway society is that this attitude leads to an increase in pollution. Factories are normally located in, not at, in the less developed countries, and there is often a race to the bottom when it comes to maximizing, when it comes to plus ing, benefits and minimizing, again, costs. For this reason, enterprises dump their waste into the rivers and release contaminated air into the atmosphere. Unfortunately, the environment usually bears the brunt of this behavior. All right. I'm not really crazy about this paragraph, not because I don't like your ideas, but I don't really like the organization. So Let's see. Always is that this attitude leads to an increase in pollution. Okay, fine. Factories normally located in less developed countries, and there's a race to maximizing benefits and minimizing cost. Okay. For this reason, enterprises dump their waste into rivers. Uh, and release contaminated air into the atmosphere. How about this? The result of this is that the environment bears the brunt of these actions. It's okay. I do feel like you could have said more. I felt like you could have a little more development here. In fact, look at your paragraphs. You've got 6 lines here, you've got 4 lines here. So it feels underdeveloped. I think you could have said more. I think you should have said more. I think there was more stuff to talk about in this paragraph. To conclude, despite, now careful on how you're using despite. This is wrong. We don't use of. We say in spite of, but not despite of. So, to conclude, despite the numerous social advantages, no, social advantages, I can't speak today. I'm sorry. Let me try it one more time. To conclude, despite the numerous social advances in the 21st century, it is undeniable that we have become used to throwing, okay, because this needs an ing, away our goods and acquiring new ones too often. As a result, some problems have arisen, like the worsening of contamination. I firmly believe that we must take on the responsibility to change this attitude in our society. Okay, good. So I like your conclusion. That was good, but I think you have a good idea of what could have been better here, what could have made this a really top-notch essay. Okay. Um, so keep at it. You're doing great. I know we've got more essays to work on together. So keep at it, and we'll meet back here with that next set. Okay. If you have any questions about this feedback, let me know. Thanks.